First category. The second category of people we are treating is, see, Union Carbide also, as you can imagine, produced a lot of hazardous industrial waste. What Jawarji was saying about burning.
Yeah, that is the
Now, Jawarji, this you will not know, but I'm telling you, this will not know because the propaganda is like that.
Yeah.
The waste that is being incinerated in Pithampur
Yeah.
is a tiny fraction
Okay.
of the waste that is actually the problem.
Yeah.
The waste that is actually the problem is underground.
Oh.
Yeah? So this is the other part of the story. The second Bhopal disaster that very few people know about. And this disaster is not connected to the gas disaster. It's connected to the production itself. And it started 2 years before the disaster. This has to do with all the industrial waste that was created. So they had no plans to dispose safely. And of course, because it's India, the corporations think they can do anything they want. So that's what they did. For the first 7 years, they did nothing. They would just dump them in pits, unlined pits. So all that is there. But in 77, they designed what they call a waste management system. But you have to realize that this was designed in Charleston, West Virginia, where there are no monsoons. So Charleston, West Virginia designed a waste management system that couldn't take care of monsoons. What they did was they designed these ponds that were about 8 meters deep and spread over a 14-hectare area. And the factory would dump all its liquid waste into these ponds. But every year during monsoons they would overflow and pollute the ground next to them and burn any farm crops that were around. This went on. And then in 82, there was a breach. The only thing that kept the toxic material from mixing in the ground was the HDPE, high density polyethylene lining. And now we know that they give in, they breach when there's heat and pressure. So they breached, the tank went empty. So all toxic material went down. We have at that time we had telexes, Union Carbide sending telexes to Charleston, West Virginia, saying, tank's gone, what do we do? They send advice, they send another telex, acted on your advice, doesn't work, doesn't hold still. So all this went on. So the toxic material started going down from then. Then, 5 years after the disaster, the Charleston people figured that we have a case for compensation that's coming from the Indian government. There could be another case because of the groundwater contamination. So Union Carbide hired a consulting agency called Arthur D. Little, ADL, and Arthur D. Little's scientists came to Bhopal secretly 5 years after the disaster. 1989, June. No, sorry, not June. I think they came before summer. Around March. They came and they took samples and they were asked to find out the LD50 values of the groundwater in and around the factory. LD50 is lethal dose 50. The dose at which, when you put fish, half the population die is called LD50. So that gives you an indication of how toxic something is. Yeah? The less the LD50 value, the more toxic it is. Their report, which you have a copy, says we were not able to find the LD50 values because every dilution we tried, it killed all the fish. So what did these ADL guys do, scientists do? They clamped down on the report. The report was shut down. Yeah. So next year, somehow I honestly forget how I figured how it occurred to me, but it occurred to me that I should get samples tested soon. And I went inside in the middle of the night. I went inside the factory. I went inside the waste management pond, the solar evaporation pond, and sent them for testing to USA. because I did engineering, so my colleagues were in the government labs. But by then, my colleagues had realized that the government was with carbide. So none of them would do the test for me, or at least they won't sign the papers. So it is useless for me. So I had to send it to US, got it tested, and found there were very many dangerous chemicals in the soil, in the water, in the groundwater, all of that. Now, what Indian Carbide did instead, that in '96, in 7 years after their first trip, when they found there was something terribly wrong, they came here in June of '96 and put earth moving machinery inside those huge ponds, over 14 hectares, and then dredged all the sludge, toxic sludge. By then was in June, it's hot summer, all solid. All that solid sludge was pushed into the third pond from 2 ponds, and it was covered with soil, and it was like a little hillock exposed to the elements that's still lying there. Yeah. So, and they left, and there it lies, and that is what is leaching toxic elements into the groundwater. And it just so happens there is something like, I'm sure you all of you know about it, because it's about forever chemicals. You know about forever chemicals? Persistent organic pollutants? Well, in the whole world there are 28 forever chemicals that are known, that have been identified. Out of those 28, 9 have been found in Bhopal water. And the water has moved at least 4.5 kilometers. So we are all in the water. So we don't use groundwater here. We can't. So it is going towards the city center. And Dow Chemical believes that if it continues to hold the people in power in its pockets, which it does, particularly this government, then it won't have to clean up. So that's where we are at. So this clinic also gives medical care to people who have been chronically exposed to groundwater. I mean, currently they are not, because people walked from Bhopal to New Delhi, 750 kilometers, twice, in 2006 and 2008, with demand to get piped water where water was poisoned. So that they have got now. But the water, as you can imagine, the contamination front continues to spread. So areas that were getting piped water, that are not getting piped water, are now getting poisoned. So this is the second disaster that nobody talks about.